I was getting death threats. Even vegans were commenting on my post as a vegan, like, this is bad timing. And I was like, who is on my side right now?
What would you say to someone who wants to become vegan?
Biggest thing I would say is right now it's the most important thing that we can do as individuals and as human beings. I'm from Canada, born and raised in Calgary. Grew up in the freezing cold and the snow. I actually love the snow. And I went vegan in 2019 and I was faced with this moral dilemma. Like, how could I continue to operate this restaurant still if I have all these values that I want to hold? It's important to really empathize with them and understand how urgent this matter is.
Thank you for being here and for accepting this invitation.
No, thank you. The pleasure is mine to be here.
So, Ben, would you start by introducing yourself?
I'm from Canada, born and raised in Calgary. Grew up in the freezing cold and the snow. I actually love the snow. I played hockey my whole life, snowboarded, and I went to school for computer science. Didn't really resonate with that. Ended up switching into graphic design, 3D animation, and really enjoyed that. And then decided after I would go into video game design to kind of put two and two together. And then I worked in the industry for about 6 months. I ended up getting into the restaurant industry for 7 years. Then I went vegan in 2019 and I was faced with this moral dilemma. Like, how could I continue to operate this restaurant still if I have all these values that I want to hold? I tried to create all these justifications in my head, like at least like I'm spending the money on something vegan, at least like I'm here educating people, or at least like I created a big vegan menu and we were doing like vegan promotions and vegan events. At the end of the day, it wasn't working. It all became clear after a while. They're like, no, like this is wrong. I can't be here. And then in 2020, that's when I joined AV. Ever since then, I was trying to build up a great chapter in Calgary.
How did you become vegan and vegan educator?
I became vegan after watching The Cove. So it was the documentary that highlights what happens to the dolphins in whales in Japan. Having been to one of these experiences at SeaWorld before and having swum with dolphins when I was in Mexico, right when I learned that this is what happens, like I was, essentially responsible for that, like my world's flipped upside down. I was like, how could I not have known this? But instantly when I saw that video, I hadn't really made a connection with food yet, but I wanted to be an activist. It was only a couple of days later when I made the connection to food. And I grew up with other people would call it avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. So like I've always been like a picky eater in everybody's eyes. But once that connection came, it was, I don't care if I die tomorrow. And then for becoming an educator, it was more of a recent thing that came onto my lap because of everything I learned as an activist. I realized that a lot of the insights that I'm, giving are not what the influencers right now are sharing. To me, like this topic is very simple. And as long as you like learn like one or two really easy principles, you can be a really effective activist.
What would you say to someone who wants to become vegan and who aspire to become an educator?
Biggest thing I would say is right now it's the most important thing that we can do as individuals and as human beings. It's our responsibility to recognize all of these things that we've been conditioned with, that farm our beliefs, all the lies that we've been fed. It's important to really empathize with them and understand how urgent this matter is. This isn't something that you can wait and do later or take baby steps towards or try out for a month. The animals need this, they need it now, and they need us to be active. They need every voice they can get. They are the most oppressed individuals on the planet. If you think that you can't make a difference, imagine you in a cage, trapped, being used, exploited, assaulted in any way. Imagine thinking that, okay, well, if one of my oppressors stopped, that wouldn't make a difference. if you truly care, if you truly want to see the world evolve morally into a better place, then it starts with you. And you need to take responsibility right now.
You have been practicing street vegan education for some times now. How many people have you told?
Oh, it's hard to keep track. I mean, I've probably done, let's say like maybe like 500
500
people.
seems very reasonable. 5,000, no?
I don't know. Let's just say 500 to be on the low
Oh
side. You
no,
know,
no, no, no. You have speak to most people, definitely.
maybe,
Sure.
but I'm also like being an organizer, right? Like my main focus isn't necessarily to have the conversations. And so, when I'm at a cube, like if there's nobody to talk to in outreach or like a bystander, I'll talk to them. So have found so much value in talking more with the activists to help other activists, right? And it was clear that people needed this. I had a lot of people start to come up to me and asking me for guidance and advice after the conversations, right? And so knowing that I could be that person was very powerful.
Would you have in mind an interaction who have been very, very great and that you have keep in your heart?
Yeah, there's one that always stands out. I was in Calgary and I was speaking to this couple. Mostly I was talking to the man, and as he's walking away, his wife, she asks me a question. She's like, "Doesn't something have to die for something or someone else to live?" I was like, "Well, if I'm eating an apple, is that apple dead? Like the tree is alive. It gave me the apple. So I can eat this apple and no one or nothing to die." Right? And she's like, "Huh. I never really thought of that before." I kind of like shaped this perspective for her. And then right after that, she starts bringing in like religion and the Bible into the conversation. The next question she asked me was, even Jesus had to die for all of us to live. And I told her, like, there's a passage in the Bible where it says anybody who's ruling in an oppressive way is immoral, right? I told her these things, and, she kinda had, like, some, like, pushback at first, but she was really open and receptive to this message, and then all of a sudden, the husband, like, just chimes in, like, cuts me off to say he's like, "You know what? You are right. You are so right. I never ever realized this, and it's all throughout the Bible, and I completely ignored it." And then the way that he started thanking me after that was, like, as if I had just, like, saved his life.
Great experience. Thank you for sharing. Could you talk about the importance of question in street vegan education and how it has shaped your activism as a vegan educator?
Questions are one of the most powerful tools that we have, and being able to use questions effectively as well. It all goes back to Socrates, right? On the Socratic method. When people can get to these realizations on their own, they own it. If I tell you to do something, you might get defensive, you won't want to do it, right? And there's always going to be resistance and pushback. But when you can get people to say these things out loud on their own, these are all values that are inherently within us. They need to hold themselves accountable for being the person that they don't even want to be.
Yeah. With all your experience, what are the most important things to do for you in order to convince people to go vegan?
There's ultimately 3 steps. And one, through questioning, you need to, like, reveal what their inner core values are and their inner core beliefs. Once you can bring those out, getting them to state, like, "Yes, I think animals deserve respect. Yes, animals shouldn't be exploited. Yes, I love animals," or whatever it is, that needs to be the first step. Number 2, using questions, you have to point out and expose the contradictions between their actions, their mentality currently, and the values that they say that they hold. And then the third step is essentially just to get them to understand why that's important. Get them to understand that these animals are individuals, right? Get them to understand that if they were that victim, they would not be okay with them. And so if you can just do those 3 things effectively, that's as simple as activism can be. And honestly, it only takes 2 minutes. You don't need footage. You don't need to be at a cube. You can do this with friends and family or whoever. I had a friend or a colleague I met through work, and he called me one day and he was like, "Hey, Ben, I want to talk about veganism. Like, I know like you're a big activist, but like I don't really know what it is." I literally just said to him, "Well, I'm like, you think the animals deserve respect?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "So do you think there's any contradictions with the way that you're living right now and these values you hold?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. And then I just explained to him like what respect truly means. I explained to him how his views essentially have reduced animals to property. And it took me 2 minutes. And he's like, holy smokes, I never heard that before. And then he went vegan and he's been vegan ever since. And it took me 2 minutes over the phone and just painting that picture properly.
For you, the three steps are first, find an inner core value, a bridge that we have with people.
Yeah.
Second, using question for revealing cognitive dissonance. We want to respect animal, but in the way we act, we do the contrary. Third, putting empathy at the first place, trying to put people in the animal's place.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I love Paul Bashir philosophy, focusing on responsibility and encouraging people to put themselves in the animal's place. Can you talk about the importance of Paul's ideas and how he has inspired you?
Paul has been an inspiration to me ever since I found AV and I became an organizer. I don't think there's anyone on the planet who has more street activism experience. We need more people involved. We need more organizations to represent the animals properly. Not saying that other organizations aren't good or stop serving their purpose or whatever.
You
But
can say it, no problem.
I have seen like there is the organization called the Humane League. They call themselves an animal rights organization, and so I started to really think about this word animal rights. And I brought up the conversation with Paul. Maybe we should veer away from calling AV an animal rights organization and maybe we should call it a vegan organization. A couple of weeks later, he messaged me. He's like, Ben, I really thought about it. And yeah, I think you're right. We should be making it a vegan organization.
I don't know if it was the case for you also, but I immediately saw the influence of Gary Yourofsky in his ideas, especially regarding the courage to always speak the truth, telling people what they need to hear and not what they want to hear. Could you share your perspective on Gary Yourofsky?
I mean, Gary led the way for pretty much every, activist alive today, right? If it wasn't for Gary, I don't think there would be an Earthling Ed. I don't think there would be a Joey, or any of these other big activists. Was he the perfect activist? No, I don't think he was the perfect activist, but I think that he was the perfect activist of his time. What he did for the animals, the uncompromising stances that he took. If you're vegan and you're not inspired by what Gary did, I don't understand. He paved the way for all of us. He was a big reason that AV grew. He is Paul's, biggest inspiration as well. And I have so much respect for him.
Donald Watson is relatively well known as the founder of veganism, but it was Leslie J. Cross who truly defined veganism. Today, Leslie J. Cross is completely underrated among vegans. This has led to the vast majority of vegans not truly understand what veganism is. So, could you tell us how important is the work of Leslie J. Cross for you and why it should be important for all vegans?
It was actually fascinating how life-changing reading his documentations that he wrote were to me. When I was reading it, every single struggle that I'd been through doing activism was solved. I realized why all the way I was responding to all these arguments was wrong. Why non-vegans ask the questions they ask. Why these excuses exist in the first place. I've only been vegan for 5.5 years. Donald Watson, Leslie J. Cross, and everybody else who was involved, after founding the Vegan Society in 1944, it took them 7 years to get to the point where they had a clear definition.
Yeah, officially, because from 1947, Leslie J. Cross starts to write the idea of the principle. In 1949, he writes a definition who is even, for me, greater, because in the 1949, it was veganism is the idea of the emancipation of animals from human exploitation.
Yeah, to be honest, like I share that view, and it might be, because language has shifted over like the 70 years, because doctrine is not really a word we use anymore. And I really love the word emancipation. It really encapsulates what we are actually fighting for. Yes, we're fighting for animal liberation, but when you are talking about that, every non-vegan thinks that you just want to release all these animals into the wild to be killed by the predators. Emancipation is perfect. And when you read the documentation, it's clear they thought about everything.
Gary Yourofsky, like Paul and Azal with AV, has been criticized by the woke movement. which ended up halting the great donation they had. They were called racist and rejected by many. What do you think about this growing wokeism that we have now?
Yeah. I always try to dissect to like really understand why it is where it is. I'm not going to say I have the answers, right? But when you're looking at the political framework, it's clear that he's gone way too far. You can't say anything to somebody in fear of being racist. And so when there's a fear of being racist, like that's not solving the problem of racism. You're just essentially like getting people to be as quiet as possible, not say anything, living in this bubble just to make sure that they're not, offending somebody or pissing somebody off. And the problem of even like being offended in the first place is a whole other thing. But when it comes into the vegan movement, actually, the way that I found out about AV and why I really had respect for them was so around the same time they posted the Black Lives Matter march. They posted this. They were the only vegan organization, animal rights organization, whoever that spoke out about that parade that had that pig's head on a stick. As soon as like the whole George Floyd thing happened, my first instinct and hearing all these people talking about oppression and blah blah and how they're anti-oppression and this and that, and I'm like none of you guys are anti-oppression. Like to themselves, they really they are. But like I can see through all of it. And so I made a post on Facebook. I essentially said that if you're against oppression, but there's, a steak on your plate, you aren't really anti-oppression. I was getting death threats. Like even vegans were commenting on my post saying like, bro, like as a vegan, like this is bad timing, like this is like, blah blah. And I was like, man, like who is on my side right now? Like where are all these people that are, pretty much my mom had my back and like my one friend Sarah had my back. That was it. And granted, like, I was this restaurant owner in the city. I used to know like all these people and I was like a pretty big figure, right? And for my bubble to go from like all these people to now only 3 people share my view and can see this clearly, it was like, whoa, what's going on? It wasn't even like a week later when I found that AV had posted about the pig's head. And I was like, holy crap, these guys understand. Like, this is
Yeah.
finding out that they also got a lot of hate for that and flat. Like, that to me did not make sense either. My biggest question is like, why do you even want to call yourself a vegan if you don't like actually want to be fighting for these animals?
What is your perspective on the relation between emotion and reason first? And also, what is your stance about the idea that showing video of animal exploitation could only lead to welfareism?
When you're going the emotional road, you have to get people to connect with the animals. They need to understand that animals are individuals. And, I understand that there's a lot of people out there right now in the world who like they're just not going to become vegan. They're not going to open up their hearts. But there is a lot of people who are open, who are caring individuals, who are, loving individuals. People essentially out there like myself before I went vegan. When I found out the truth, I went vegan on the spot. The people in the videos that we have all the access to, the people who actually say that they're going to go vegan today are not the people who are being debated into this. They're the people who are making the emotional connections, realizing their cognitive dissonance, and making that change.
Yeah.
And even the cross, like, he talks about like essentially basic respect being the foundation of this movement, right? But it's only so that we can build on top of this. Like veganism isn't the goal, it's the foundation, it's the baseline. Once we get to this vegan world, that's where like we can actually start to add things on top like virtue and care ethics, right? And compassion. That's where these things can actually grow. But he says that as long as the animals are chained, we are also enchained. We don't want to waste time entering these people who want to debate, who think that they have validity to their arguments and want to waste our time, taking us away from the conversations that we could be having. I want to like people who are open, who are receptive, who are willing to like be the change makers.
And about the screen, what do you think?
So I think there's actually merit to what he's saying, that these videos ultimately lead to welfareism. but I think it's probably for not the reason that he thinks. And so, like, if you watch like all any video on like YouTube or Instagram of people doing outreach with the footage, all of those conversations go into welfare's conversations. Almost every single one does. And probably the activist isn't aware, they're not really understanding why or that they're even in a welfare's conversation. So then the question becomes, are they in that place because of the activist or are they in that place because of the footage? The footage wants to lead the person that you're outreaching into that conversation of welfare. But as activists, it's up to us to understand not to let it get to there and to send the right message. Like, should we stop showing this footage? No, we shouldn't stop showing this footage. The amount of people that I've seen, heard, and like have told me that just them walking past the queue and getting a flash of that image has been enough for people to go vegan. And, I'll admit, like, when I was growing up, I always said, like, I didn't want to watch how my food was made. Knew if I watched it, it would hit me forever.
I wanted to ask you about artificial intelligence that you create. I have tried it and I can say to you it's very compelling. I have tried to be the best non-vegan possible. Like I have started to ask 1,000 vegetarian is better than one vegan. He put me justice is not about numbers. You can have
Yeah.
1,000 vegetarian but they still hold the speciesist belief that animal exist for our use. So I have tried to defeat, but I not succeed. Tell us more about that and how can people can use it because it's a very, very great tool.
I've put a lot of time into this. I have a lot of people who are helping me with trying to break it as well. It all started because I woke up one day, I opened up Instagram and I had 100 anti-vegan comments on one of my posts. And like I just got overwhelmed. I was like, shit, like how do I respond? Like how am I gonna sit here and answer all 100 of these? I had to respond to all these. So I started commenting and I'm like, okay, well, a lot of people are like using the same, line. We're copy pasting some of the stuff for them. For the other ones that were a little bit longer, I was like, okay, what if I like go into ChatGPT and I just like copy and paste the script and then like ask it to create a response for this. But like there's gotta be a better way to do this now because now I'm like creating these really long threads and it has to keep track. And this is where I discovered that ChatGPT allows you to make your own custom GPTs. I started playing around with that. Then I started working on a whole bunch of different ones. Some are more uncompromising. Some are like as if a sage, like an ancient guru was talking to you. I've embodied Leslie Cross into one of these AIs as well. They all have the abolitionist tone. I've also created some that are like I created vegan Socrates. So like it will only respond in questions. Whatever style of responses people want, I've built something for all of them. It's actually really cool. So I'm actually really excited. But the bigger idea that came from this was actually to write a book. All of writings and the instructions I've been training the models on, I think this needs to go into a book that can reach everybody, but also teach people that this tool exists. My goal with writing the book is to unify the movement, show them the right way to advocate, the right type of language to use, but also it will start with the first section not actually really being about veganism. I think it'll help really tie in the justice of what veganism is, how to perfectly dismantle, how to be effective.
Would you have an idea to develop a real YouTube channel in the future?
I'm definitely working on it. I maybe like I'm a little bit of a too much of a perfectionist. I'm really trying to like let patience dictate the direction that I'm going to take it in. I'm still like learning a lot, forming my voice, how I want my brand identity to be on social media, YouTube and everything. Also like editing these videos takes a lot of time and a lot of work. I really want to like add value. I'm not going to be doing this for money. I'm going to be doing this for education. In the meantime, like Instagram has been an easy platform for me to post my videos, get my thoughts that come and or I see something and I hear something and I just need to like say something about it. I think there's also like a purpose behind each medium. My TikTok is more dedicated to like targeting non-vegans with a message.
We see a lot of vegan activists alone right now. It seems to me that everybody is starting a YouTube channel, everybody is starting like an Instagram page, and it's growing exponentially. How do you see the evolution of the vegan movement in this aspect?
I've heard about 5 stories now of people doing solo cubes. right? So they'll have the TV on themselves and they'll be standing there for mass. And if somebody comes up, they like lift the mask and just have an outreach conversation with them.
That's
And people are even recording this, right? To me, like this is inspiring.
yeah.
And if you have the courage to go out by yourself and be an activist, right? In a world where everybody's against you, like there's nobody even out there to have your back if something goes wrong or to protect you or anything. I think like the more that we can flood social media, the more that we could flood people with the right message. I think this is important. And yeah, I love it. I love seeing that people are moving to this direction. I'm seeing more and more content creators come up. One thing I would love to see that I do not see at all is the people with the biggest platforms on social media
Yeah.
never share the smaller accounts when I get the chance, like promote them or comment on their videos. I want them to grow with me too. It needs to be a bigger effort, just getting people to like promote other vegan accounts.
Most animal organizations promote reducetarianism, vegetarianism, welfareism as good thing. So, from your perspective, what are the biggest challenge we face in creating a vegan world?
Ooh, there's a lot. The way I would want to answer this is what's the lowest hanging fruit? So what's the easiest problem that we can solve that will have the biggest impact? From my perspective, it's within the vegan movement. If there's like 100 billion vegans on the planet or 100 million, if we could all unify together under one message, under one clear goal, and really just go out and be uncompromising on this one thing, I think that could have the biggest impact that people just don't even understand. Like, imagine if feminists were talking about reducing suffering, you know, like, oh yeah, we're doing this to reduce suffering, and like, imagine if they became intersectional, like, oh yeah, we also have to care about, you know, our male perpetrators and make sure that, you know, like their voices are also heard and, you know, they're also like victims here or any other movement. Like if you look at slavery, what abolished slavery? It was the radical belief that humans are not property. People that stuck to that, no matter what, who got the job done. Before any law was passed, they had to convince enough people that humans are not property. To me, like the only obstacle in front of me is me. Right? So I always look at it from that frame. How can I be more effective? How can I be better? How can I improve? How can I grow? And one thing that really always kind of like simplifies the movement for me is this small statistic. If there's 100 billion vegans in the world right now, the population of vegans needs to double every year for 6 years for the whole world to be vegan. That means that if you go vegan now, and within the next 6 years, you convince 6 people to go vegan and convince that person to convince one other person, the world will be vegan in 6 years. And that's not hard. I've convinced 6 people this year. I've convinced more than 6 people. It puts everything into perspective. If I actually care about this movement, if I care about victims and then I care about justice, all I need to convince one person.
Exactly.
There is no doubt in my mind that we will get to a vegan world. It's just a matter of when.
Completely agree. That was a great message to finish the interview. So Ben, thank you a lot for your time. And where we can follow you?
On most social media, my handle is just Ben Mazaya. On TikTok, I also have like my Trigger account, which is X Carnivore. Trigger them there if you guys want to have some fun over there. And then yeah, YouTube on X is all Ben Mazaya. I have my Substack where I'm gonna be posting more. I post lots of like poetry and just small snippets on Threads as well.
Awesome, Ben. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your activism. You are a very great activist. I love what you do. Thanks everyone for listening to this interview until the end. And remember that the fate of animals is in your hands. They need you to help them to be free. Go vegan, become vegan educator, and see you very soon for the next interview.